Hello everybody and welcome back to the second of our videos in the preview series looking ahead to May's 2026 local elections. Look, like I said, I've said a number of times, I'm really excited about this preview series as we build up towards those elections. There's going to be a lot of news stories coming out after those elections. There's going to be big changes. I think both two main parties are going to get hammered, and particularly the Labour Party, who are more exposed next year than they were in the county council elections that took place earlier this year. So we're here looking at London today. That's going to be the second sort of episode in this preview series. Now, we're not going to look at all of London. I wanted to, but frankly, there's just too much of it to go through to go into detail. So I'd rather be a bit more detailed. We're going to go through just a certain region of London today, and we'll come back to London later on because there is a lot to get into. We're not going to touch a lot of it. So bear that in mind. We're not going to cover it all. We are going to look at East London today because I think that is where a lot of the stories are going to come from. Well, we're going to get into it and see just how devastating it's going to be for Labour in particular. Now, you may have noticed, I forgot to mention on the last video, I'm putting in, and it's going to come up in a minute at the top right of the screen, I'm putting in a link to go and get registered to vote. Now, we've got 6 months to go until the local elections in May, and my big thing with this channel, more than anything, is I'd love to get more people involved in politics just in terms of taking part and going to the ballot box. Look, we had a very low turnout at the general election last year. That's bad for democracy. It's bad for our system. So we need as many people going out and voting as possible. You don't have to go and vote for a party. Go and spoil your ballot. Whatever you need to do, write rude words on it or rude pictures on it, whatever you want to do. But if you go and at least register a vote, then you've taken part and you've done your bit. So I'm quite passionate about that. I'd love for that for that to be sort of a thing that comes from this channel. That'd be great. So those links are going to keep popping up in the right hand corner. If you haven't registered to vote, please do go and register so you can take part in May next year. Right, let's get into this. We are going to start by looking at the London Borough of Hackney. Now, before we get into it, I forgot to mention what we're looking at here. So we're looking at Nowcast, but it's not the election maps Nowcast. This is on nowcast.uk, and we're looking at a ward level data map. Now, this is experimental, and it is a Nowcast for a general election. So this is not done for local elections. This is, like I say, it's an experimental map to start with, and it's based off of a general election, like national polling for a general election. So just bear that in mind. Okay, we don't have much data when it comes to local elections, so this is the best we have to go on, and that's why I'm using it. I think getting it down to the ward level really helps. It's better than using the other Nowcast, although Election Maps' Nowcast is brilliant. It only shows us constituency levels. We can't even see it down to the borough level. So here we're seeing at the borough level and indeed at the ward level, but these are still for parliamentary constituencies, not for the borough council. So just bear that in mind, please. Don't come at me in the comments. We mentioned it. This is kind of the best we have to go on. So London Borough of Hackney, look, in 2022, Labour did very well. Let's just go and have a look. In Hackney, Labour did very well. They had a big majority, as you can see on the screen here. They won 46 seats at the election in 2022. You can see the size of that majority on the screen there. Now, they've lost a few since that election. They've lost a couple via defections and by-elections, what have you, but not really anything to change the composition of the council. But as we come back to our Nowcast here, we're just going to have a look through some of these wards. So look, Homerton Ward in Hackney. In 2022, Labour won 72% of the vote here. Now, you can see, based off what's on your screens, that they're nowhere near that now. 36.9% of the vote they're on. So they're down 35% in Homerton Ward. Obviously, the Green Party are the big beneficiaries here, up to 44% of the vote, which is extraordinary. And look, this is a 3-seat ward, and on 44, almost 45% of the vote, the Greens are getting close to being able to win all 3 of those seats. Again, bearing in mind this is general election, if this were to translate into local election, of course, we're taking that pinch of salt. But if that were, they're getting on for it, for being able to win all 3 seats. I think with Labour on 37%, they may well just sneak in on the third one, but the Greens certainly going to win 2 seats there off of Labour in Homerton. And sorry, guys, there is going to be some jumping around in the edit for this video because I can't remember where all these wards are geographically. So there's going to be a few seconds of me clicking through to find the right ward. So there is going to jump around a bit. I apologise for that. Right, Hackney Wick Ward. Again, similar story. Labour in 2022, 70% of the vote, down 32.5 percentage points to 37.5% of the vote. Again, the Greens doing very well on 43.2. And again, another 3-councillor or 3-seat ward. With the numbers that close, the Greens would only be able to win 2 out of 3. They would have to knock a few more percent off Labour and get close to that 50% in order to win all 3. But you can see just how much damage the Green Party are doing to Labour in Hackney. You know, this borough that they won very, very comfortably. Now, look, generally across the borough of Hackney, Labour are down at least 30% across all of these wards, which is incredible. Now, look, that's not a decline that we are necessarily surprised to see, is it, these days? We see this a lot on a weekly basis with Labour. Big declines, well in excess of 20 percentage points down, and indeed here in Hackney down at least 30% across the wards in this borough. But it's not even only bad news for the Labour Party. There's bad news for the Conservatives too. Now, look, the Conservatives were not a force in Hackney anyway. They had, I think, 4 or 5 councillors. Was on the council we looked at it there. They won 4 or 5. They won a whole ward, Springfield in particular. But look, you can see here they're going to be wiped out in Hackney, the Conservatives. So the Conservatives are down 43.6 percentage points on their 2022 score, down to 15% of the vote here in Springfield. This won't be enough to win them any seats. Again, reminding you again that pinch of salt about local elections versus general election nowcast. But still, wouldn't be surprised to see this at all. They'll be wiped out in Springfield ward, and in the neighbouring Stamford Hill West ward, they're down 40 points here as well on 2022 scores. If they were to get 18.6 in the local elections next year, they'd be down 40 points, and again losing the seats they had here in Stamford Hill West. So look, obviously terrible news for Labour in Hackney. You can see, just depending on how good your London geography is, if we just take the tooltip away there, you can see just how green this part of London has gone, which shows that the Green Party leading in the polls in these wards. Look, that's going to be a big problem for Labour, and we're going to get into this as we go across these borough councils. We're going to go and have a look next at Haringey. So Haringey, just north of Hackney in London, 2022, again, very strong Labour Party victory. Big majority, only the Liberal Democrats on the council with them, and they only managed to get 7 themselves, councillors. Labour Party got 50 seats. They are down in 2025, again via defections and by-elections and what have you, down 5 seats. So they've lost 5. You can see the trend already starting to emerge. The Green Party gaining 2, and also some independents there, up 3 as well. That'll be via defections, most likely. So Bruce Castle ward in Haringey, continuing a theme. Labour won 76% of the vote here in 2022. They're down now to 34.6%. That's down 41 percentage points. And again, probably going to lose 2 seats out of 3. If this polling were to come true, the Greens, well, it's very close between Labour and the Greens, and therefore makes it very difficult with first past the post to pass out how 3 seats would be split. But benefit of the doubt to the party that's leading in the polls. The Greens probably with enough to win the 2 out of the 3. Labour down to 1 seat, having won all 3 4 years ago. Neighbouring Northumberland Park, again a very similar story, and 77% for Labour in 2022, down 42 percentage points, and again the Greens just sort of inching out ahead of them here in Northumberland Park. Now look, the lead for the Greens here in these Haringey wards is not quite as large as what we saw in Hackney, which is why the races for multiple seat wards will be a bit closer to call. But look, you can see how bad this is for Labour. You can see how they've gone from a massive share of the vote in these wards, and indeed a big majority on the council, down to being in second place. And they're going to lose a huge number of seats. Regardless of what happens, they are going to lose a large number of seats to the Green Party here in Haringey. Now, as you go into the west of the borough, the Labour losses aren't as bad. Now, there's a point here to make about this map, because actually, if we go into the west of the ward, like I said, the Labour losses are not as bad. The vote's holding up a bit better, and they're managing to maintain the lead. That's why you can see as you go west of these green wards here, west of here, you come into this part of Haringey, where you can see that the Labour Party are actually in the lead. But Liberal Democrat losses are actually worse in these wards, and that's what makes me think that maybe there is a little bit of tomfoolery going on as we're trying to make a sort of connection between general election voting and local election voting on this nowcast. So I wouldn't necessarily believe that's true, that the Liberal Democrats are seeing worse losses in Haringey than the Labour Party are. Perhaps they are. I mean, if you live in Haringey or that part of London and you're more clued in than me, please feel free to get in the comments. But it seems unlikely to me. I feel the Liberal Democrats may well be gaining at Labour's expense. But look, that's what the nowcast says. So we'll just bear that in mind. That may not be the case. But as we come into this sort of western part, we're going to have a quick look at Alexandra Park Ward, where look, Labour's vote share here is down actually less than 10%. The Liberal Democrat vote, according to this, if we were to take this compared to their 2022 result, they're down about 20%. They got 45% of the vote in 2022. So like I say, I don't necessarily believe that. If that were the case, with the Greens there on 25, just ahead of Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party would gain a seat off the Liberal Democrats, and Labour would hold on to their one. It's a 2-seat ward, Alexandra Park. So like I say, I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is, but it's best we've got to go on, so we'll look at that. And then in Bounds Green, Labour down here 20 percentage points. But again, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens kind of splitting the vote there in this ward would mean that Labour probably managed to win 2 seats still, because they're quite way ahead there of the Greens in second place. So some interesting things going on in Haringey. Like I say, I think the nowcast perhaps is falling down a little bit. Other honourable mentions though, in terms of how in the areas of sort of in the east of the borough where Labour have done very poorly. Seven Sisters, they're down 38 points. South Tottenham, they're down 36 points. So look, again, you just see, and again in those, it's the Green Party who are making the most out of Labour's misery there. So look, really, really bad news for Labour, and it only gets worse, really. As we're going to go and have a quick look at Newham now. So Newham Borough Council, again, same story. A big majority for Labour in 2022. No one even close. The Green Party got 3 seats, but Labour absolutely dominating in Newham. Now in 2025, again, things have already changed. You can already see a trend emerging. Labour are down 6 since 2022, and they've all gone via defections or by-elections to other. Now, other in this case is largely the Newham Independents. Now, they featured on the channel not long ago, actually. These are essentially very much pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine independents. And they beat Labour in a recent by-election in this borough as well. So let's go and have a look at the map. So firstly then, right in the south of the borough, Royal Albert Ward, Labour here, down 32 percentage points to 28%. It's a 2-seat ward, and you can see they're just around about 2% behind the others there, which we will put down to being Newham Independents. Now look, one thing to say on this is I don't know the Newham Independents' capacity to stand candidates for each seat. I don't know if they have the manpower to do that, but assuming they do, then here they're beating Labour by, like I say, 2.5%, and Labour will be losing one of these seats. They have both seats in Royal Albert at the moment. In neighbouring Royal Victoria, they're down 27 percentage points here, down to 21% of the vote, and here the Independents have a much stronger lead over them. And again, Labour are losing at least 1 seat. Now in a 2-seat ward, the Independents would need more than that to win both. So Labour are going to hang on to 1 seat with those numbers at the moment. But you can see Reform in third, not even too far behind Labour. And indeed the Green Party not too far behind them either. So there's certainly more scope for the Labour Party to lose further vote share here. In Canning Town North, Labour's still in the lead, but they're down 31 percentage points. If the vote here isn't split between the Greens and the others, or in the Newham Independents, Labour will probably be down to just 1 seat here out of 3. But you can see that with the Greens and the Independents kind of getting in each other's way there a little bit, so Labour are able to maintain a 4 percentage point lead roughly over the Newham Independents in second place. If the Greens or the Independents got out of the way, which may well happen. Like I say, I don't know if the Newham Independent Party can get enough candidates into every ward, in which case in this may be one where they let the Greens have a run at Labour. Assuming all of that vote went to one party or the other, as you can see, they'll be on over 40% of the vote, and certainly enough to win 2 seats and relegate Labour to just the 1. And West Ham, a very, very similar story with the Greens and the Independents. You can see they're splitting the vote. Again, that they would have about 43-44% of the votes if just one of them, assuming one of them could consolidate all of those votes together. But as it is with the vote shares like that, probably going one seat each, Labour, Green, and the Newham Independents. So look, again, we looked at just a few wards there in Newham, but here we've seen the issue with the Green Party that Labour have in Hackney and Haringey. Now in Newham, you're seeing the issue they're going to have from pro Gaza independents. I don't think Newham by any means will be the only borough in London where this is an issue for the Labour Party, and also the Greens here as well, because the Greens are eating quite a way in to that Labour vote as well, and really the Greens and the Newham Independents may be getting in each other's way slightly there. Now we're going to have a very quick mention on Tower Hamlets. Now Tower Hamlets is an interesting one. So Labour borough for a long time, they lost it. I can't remember when they lost it, if I'm in all honesty, but essentially it's run now by a party called Aspire. These are ex-Labour councillors who formed their own party. They are run by a man called Lutfur Rahman. He was convicted of election fraud and banned from taking part for 5 years, I think, or something. But he's back. He's the mayor of Tower Hamlets, and he leads this party. And they essentially won the election in 2022, not enough to have a majority in their own right, but they clubbed together with the other independents there, four of those to get over the line. Now this will be very, very interesting this year. The changes since 2025, not much. Labour have lost one and the others have got one up, so that'll be a defection, Labour over to an independent. But what is very interesting in Tower Hamlets, taking into consideration that historical context that it used to be a Labour borough and now no longer is that they're going to lose more ground. I think Aspire will do well again in Tower Hamlets, and Labour are going to lose out in a number of wards. We're going to look here just quickly at Bow East and West. So Bow East, Labour down 22 percentage points in both, essentially, around the same in both. And the Greens are going to eat Labour's lunch here. They are probably going to win at least 2 of the 3 seats in Bow East. And if we flip across to Bow West, they're going to win, well, potentially they may win both seats. It's currently 1 each, Labour and Green. With a 2-seat ward getting up towards 40%, you're probably in the region where you can look at winning both seats. So Green's probably only 2 percentage points away from being able to win both seats in Bow West. So just a quick stop in Tower Hamlets, because I think like I say, Labour's going to lose more ground in a borough that they actually started losing ground in a number of years ago. Okay, now here's where things get very interesting. We'll move south of the river into Lewisham Borough, and as you can see here, Labour won all of the seats in Lewisham in 2022. Outright domination in this borough. There has been some changes again since 2022. They've lost 2 seats to the Greens via either defections or by-elections, but still, obviously, a huge, huge, huge majority here in Lewisham. Well, it's very much a similar story we've seen in Haringey and Hackney. Labour in Evelyn Ward, Lewisham, down 24 percentage points. The Greens up 20 percentage points. They should win at least 2 seats there. New Cross Gate, Labour down 30 percentage points. Greens up 25 percentage points to just almost 40% of the vote. Now, it's quite close between the two of them there. And this would be 1 seat each. And that is actually the status quo because there is currently 1 Labour, 1 Green via a defection from Labour to the Green Party since 2022. In Telegraph Hill Ward, Labour down 33 percentage points again. Greens up 27 percentage points to 45% of the vote. And look, on 45% of the vote, the Greens may well win all 3 seats. I think Labour on 35 may be able to just win 1. They may sneak in for the 3rd one, but again, the Greens very, very close there to wiping Labour out in this ward. So look, very, very much a similar story as to what we've seen in those other 2 boroughs we looked at earlier. The Greens just pushing Labour aside in Lewisham in a borough where Labour won all of the seats in 2022. They're just not going to do that again. It's not going to happen for them. And looking at these numbers, it may well even be that they don't even get a majority. And these are the sort of massive stories that we're going to expect to see in 2026. Like I said, it's going to be a huge, huge election. In the south of the borough, Labour's vote is not collapsing quite as much, and or the Greens' vote has not surged enough to overtake them. But certainly they're still gaining seats off of Labour, like in Perry Vale. where it's the Green Party only 4% behind Labour. They'll certainly gain a seat there. In Forest Hill, again, similar story. They're really only 2% behind Labour in Forest Hill. They'll gain a seat there. And also in Downham, where Labour won all the seats last time. Greens here much further behind, but they've got enough of the vote there, I'm pretty sure, to win at least one of the 3 seats. So, again, another borough where Labour dominated in 2022, winning all of the seats. And they are, like I say, in danger, I think, of potentially even losing their majority. They may well be largest party. We'll have to wait and see. Going on then to another council where Labour won every single seat, Barking and Dagenham Borough Council. Now, what we're about to see here is, as I said, the word extraordinary. It's even more extraordinary. It really, really is. So as you see, Labour winning every seat here in 2022. In 2025, they have again lost 3 seats to the Greens and 1 to an independent. But what we're about to see on this map will take your breath away, and I'm not even being dramatic or overly theatrical with this. This is extraordinary. So if we go to Gascoigne Ward, so Labour here are down 60 points. 60. In 2022, in Gascoigne Ward, Labour won 88% of the vote. And look at them now. They are in the lead, but only just by less than 1% in the lead ahead of the Green Party. And this ward is most likely on these numbers that you can see on the screen there, going 1 seat each, Labour, Reform and Green. It's a similar story in Eastbury Ward, Abbey and Thames View. And the numbers carry on being extraordinary as we make our way up to Chadwell Heath in the north of the borough. Here, Labour are down 67 percentage points, probably down to 1 seat, losing out to the independents here. Now, I don't know what the independent scenario is in Barking and Dagenham. Look, again, bearing in mind this is a general election nowcast, okay? So this may well be off. It may well be off. But look, the numbers for Labour are catastrophically bad in terms of the amount of vote share that they are losing. Eastbrook and Rush Green. Here's where Reform starts to come into the picture. Labour down here 30%, so a mediocre decline compared to what we've just seen in other parts of this borough. Reform up 37. Reform probably only 3 percentage points away from having a chance of taking both seats here, with Labour and the Greens splitting each other on around about 20% of the vote. Reform, I reckon if they hit 40, they get both seats in Eastbrook and Rush Green and wipe Labour out entirely, which is just, again, it's extraordinary. Village Ward, again, Labour down 59 percentage points, Reform up to 36. Probably enough for Reform to win at least 2 of the seats here, being around about 10% ahead of Labour in second place. Labour just about beating the Green Party into second place with a 4% lead there. So look, Labour are just close to being wiped out in places in Barking and Dagenham, a council, to remind you, where they won every single seat just 4 years ago. To bring it into context, in 2022, across the borough of Barking and Dagenham, Labour won 81% of the votes in this borough. 81%. They're not going to get anywhere close to that. They are looking at it quite possibly not even going to have, again, not going to have a majority. They may well not even be the largest party looking at these numbers, bearing in mind the now cast general election, local election thing. Okay, it's all there. We know about that. It's factored in. It's the best we've got to go on. We know Reform are doing very, very well in East London. They are, according to the now cast and election maps, they are projected to win the Barking constituency. So, look, it's not by any means unbelievable. All right, we're going to move on to Havering now, because again, it's an area in East London where Reform are projected to do very, very well in a general election. As you can see, it's an independent-run council. They have a majority here in their own right. So this is where we have to perhaps be even more sceptical of the nowcast, because that nowcast, looking at a general election, it's going to miss the independent vote at a local level. So we'll bear that in mind going into this and be even more sceptical of the nowcast. But as I say, you can see it's the independents who got a majority on this council. The Conservatives clearly in second place. They won 17 seats at the election. Now, there has been some changes. Again, Reform have picked up a seat here. It'll be via a defection or a by-election off of the Conservatives, and that's the only change actually. So as we go over to the map, we're going to start by looking at St Edward's Ward. So again, bearing in mind the independent factor, I should mention, because of the independent factor, all I'm looking at here is wards where the Conservatives won all the seats. So the wards where the Conservatives did very, very well, and then we can just see how Reform are doing against them. It takes out, to a certain extent, the independent factor. Not entirely, but it takes it out slightly. So St Edward's Ward, Conservatives here down 15 percentage points, and that's really bad. Don't be sort of anaesthetised to these declines in vote shares because Labour are losing 60% in Dagenham. It's still very, very bad now, but they are much more mild for the Conservatives in London. So down 15 percentage points for the Tories. They're going to lose 2 seats to Reform here, who are up to 38.5% of the votes. It's a 3-seat ward, and the Reform are going to win 2 seats out of 3 there, unless they can push on another 3 or 4%, maybe 8%, get up towards that 45% mark. Then they will probably win all 3 of the seats. Morney's ward, again another 3-seat ward. Tories here down 18 percentage points. Again, they're going to lose 2 seats to Reform, who come straight in again at 38.8. And again, they're very, very close to that 40% mark where you can start thinking about winning all 3 seats. So look, it's bad news for Labour. Don't get me wrong, it's bad news for Labour. It's awful news for Labour. And I think these elections are going to be really bad for the Labour Party. But it's not good for the Conservatives either. I said on my by-election roundup video last week, there is no bounce for the Conservatives. There's no sign of a comeback. There's no sign of life. They're just slowly but surely withering away. And where they are defending next year, I think they're going to get punished as well. They're just not quite as exposed as the Labour Party are. All right, Rush Green and Cronin is the last one we'll look at in Havering, just to dance around that independent issue. Now here the Conservatives down 22 points, so it's getting worse. Again, 2 seats going to Reform. They're on 36.7% of the vote, almost 13% ahead of the Conservatives. And again, very close to that 40% mark where they can start looking at wiping the Conservatives out entirely. So look, we have to factor in that independent factor that they're there. Very, very difficult to get around that in terms of the polling here. I'm not an expert enough to know how to sort of finagle that. So, but look, Reform are projected to do very, very well in East London in a general election. So I don't think it's out of the ordinary to expect them to do quite well in these local elections next May. Okay, lastly then, let's go and have a look over at Bromley Borough Council, South East London. Look, this is, as you can see, a council where the Conservatives actually managed to win a majority in 2022. In fact, that's in 2025. There's 2022. They won it with a decent majority there. Labour in second place. Back over to the 2025 screen, and you can see a couple of changes, being that Reform have made a couple of gains off of the Conservative Party via by-elections and or defections there. But for the most part, the same. Conservatives still with their healthy majority in Bromley. Let's have a look and see what that's looking like under the nowcast conditions. So, yeah, look, it's not the worst news in Bromley for the Conservatives, but they're not going to maintain majority down here on Bromley Council. Look, if we take a look at Bromley Common and Holwood Ward, Conservatives here are down 21 percentage points. Pretty bad. Reform, they have a seat here already that they won via a by-election fairly recently, I think. And you can see they're on 31% of the vote, a good 5% ahead of the Conservative Party. With the numbers as they are, they're fairly close. 9% separates first from third. I reckon that probably would go 1 Reform, 1 Conservative, 1 Labour. Not the worst result for Conservatives, perhaps you may say, but look, this was a three council award for the Conservatives 4 years ago. They won all 3 here. So that's a taste of where things are just going to go wrong for the Tories. They won't win a majority in Bromley. In place, though, actually interesting, we were talking about the Conservatives, but there's bad news here for Labour as well. Labour won Plaistow Ward in 2022. Here the Conservatives are down 14 percentage points. Labour are down 20 percentage points. Reform obviously up 30. And Labour are going to lose the ward. Look on those numbers. It's a 2 councillor ward, and unfortunately there's not going to be any room for a Labour councillor there. It's going to go Conservative and Reform. So look, bad news continues for Labour, even in areas of the city where they didn't potentially perhaps do all that well before. Look, across the borough of Bromley, it's close between Conservatives and Reform. It is about a 5-6% gap, as we've seen there in those 2 examples. So Reform not streets ahead at the moment as it stands. In the west of the borough, Labour's vote is actually holding up quite well. They're still winning in Clockhouse Ward, Crystal Palace and Annerley, and Penge and Cater. So look, I said there's some bad news for Labour there. They're actually holding up fairly well in these areas that they did win, with the exception of Plaistow, winning in 2022. So look, it's a incredibly bad news for the Labour Party. Bad news for the Conservatives, I think, in areas where they're defending, like I've said. But of course, Labour are going to be the big headline losers in May. And on that note, that is the preview for the East London boroughs. Like I say, I wanted to do the whole of London, but there is just so much to get into, as I'm sure you've gathered there, going through what we've looked at already. And I want to give the whole of the rest of the city the time it deserves. But just looking at the nowcast that we usually use, this is the election maps nowcast. So again, general election projection, and these are the parliamentary constituencies. But just looking at the map, you can see in some ways a confirmation of what we've just been talking about in many ways, I suppose. If you look at that east of London area, you look at Barking, very, very strong for reform on the nowcast, or at least they're taking the lead off of Labour, which would back up what we saw in Barking Borough. Dagenham and Rainham, again, we've covered, very, very strong for reform there indeed, an 18-point lead. As you move up towards sort of Havering area, Hornchurch and Upminster, again, leading for reform. Now, of course, there's that independent sort of spanner in the works potentially as far as the local elections go, but as far as parliamentary goes, it's very, very much going towards reform. As we move our way into that southeast area, again, we looked at sort of Bromley and Biggin Hill, reform doing well. A little bit further in the west of that area, Beckenham and Penge, like we said, Labour actually holding up quite well, as we can see there in the nowcast polling for Beckenham and Penge. So, kind of being backed up. Similarly, if we go into Hackney South and Shoreditch, you see Labour leading, but you can see the Greens are making gains on them slowly but surely. Labour only 9 points ahead now in Hackney South and Shoreditch. Hackney North and Stoke Newington, same story. Diane Abbott's constituency, she's just under 10 points ahead of the Greens. Now the Greens slowly but surely just catching up to Labour in these areas where we saw they're going to eat very, very heavily into Labour's vote share at the local elections next May. Now look, as we go on, as we get closer, I'm going to put my neck on the line. When we get close to May, I will start projecting or predicting who is going to control the councils, or if it'll be no overall control. We're going to go back to the yet another political map simulator, and we'll have a look at who's going to end up controlling them. At the moment, I just want to give us an overview of the lay of the land, who controls what right now, and who's looking like they're going to be the winners and losers. And obviously, Labour. It's going to be catastrophic for Labour. I think I've said in London in particular, reform obviously have that opportunity in that east area of London, as you can see on the screen there. That is going to be should be an area of significant gains for them, largely at the expense of the Conservatives, because the Conservatives did better in those outer London areas last time out. Of course, as we mentioned, in Havering, it's going to be more independence, and we're not entirely sure how that's going to work out. But for Labour, in those inner city areas, plenty of them, and there will be more that we haven't looked at yet. I think obviously Islington is going to be probably a damaging one for Labour, and as you move your way across that sort of areas of North London, but nearer to the centre of the city, Labour are going to get punished badly, and we've only looked there today because I thought the ones we looked at just in this video were the ones that are the big tickets, if you like. They're the ones that you can see from that map. That's where the Greens are currently leading Labour in so many wards, and likewise Reform, respectively. And look, Labour, they're not going to get wiped out in London. It's still going to be a fairly Labour-friendly area of the country, but it's going to be an awful lot less Labour-friendly. Excuse me, an awful lot less Labour-friendly than it was 4 years ago or in 2022. And look, the pressure's going to mount on Starmer because London's going to be damaging. I'm certain they're going to be pummeled up in the northwest and the northeast and the West Midlands and Wales and Scotland. Like, there is nowhere in the country that is looking like it's going to be a pleasant experience for Labour in May. As for the Conservatives, look, they're slowly sort of fading away from relevance. Like I say, I think they are going to drop a lot of seats in the areas where they're defending. They are less exposed in May than Labour are, whereas this year obviously was much more, Conservatives were much more exposed to big losses. The best they can hope for is a slightly less bloody nose than Labour, really, and that's what they'll get. They won't be the main headliners on the night, but it's not going to be a good news story, and there's very little optimism really around the Conservatives' fortunes as far as I can see at the moment. But look, that's all we got for this video. Like I say, there's a lot to get into in London. It's not going to be the next video. We'll move on to somewhere else in the country, but we will come back to look at London. Look, we haven't even touched on, you know, the Liberal Democrats there dominating in the southwest. Reform sort of on the western fringes of London as well, and those other areas I just mentioned for Labour too. So there is an awful lot more to get into. Please do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss those future videos. Next up, I think we'll go and look at the northwest of England. I think that's going to be another real area of real pain for Labour in May. So please do make sure you are subscribed up for that video. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.